Severe weather can strike at any time, and you can take steps now to help keep you and your family safe. The Storm Track 3 team looks back at the biggest local impacts over the last century. We've got you covered on how to be ready for the worst. Project Tornado starts right now.
Thanks for joining us for Project Tornado. I'm News 3 WSIL Chief Meteorologist Jim Razor. During the next 30 minutes, we're going to look back on some of the most notable tornadoes in this region. And we'll take some time to remind you of steps you can take to keep you and your family safer in the event of severe weather. The entire News 3 WSIL weather team will be here, much like during a severe weather event. We are fortunate to have 4 full-time professional meteorologists working hard to keep you informed. Tornadoes can occur in any month, at any time of day, but as the weather shifts from winter into spring and temperatures climb, the risk of the development of the most violent storms on Earth goes up. A tornado is defined as a rapidly rotating column of air. The strongest of these storms can produce wind speeds near 300 miles per hour, destroying everything in their path. One of the largest and deadliest tornadoes in history occurred right here at home. March 18, 1925, the Great Tri-State Tornado. 234 souls lost in Murfreesboro, the largest single-city death toll from a tornado, a record that still stands nearly 100 years later. Meteorologist Nick Housen digs deeper into that terrible day.
Jim, today Murfreesboro is working to revitalize its downtown and breathe some new life into the old buildings, much like this one, which was built just 1 year before the worst tornado to ever strike the United States, passed just 2 blocks to the north.
Just try to imagine the disorientation of coming out from wherever you had, digging out or coming out.
That's what it was like in Murfreesboro and for many other communities along a 219-mile tornado path, March 18, 1925. Crossing parts of 3 states, it's simply known as the Tri-State Tornado. And it's the longest tracking tornado in U.S. history, and also the deadliest, claiming 695 lives and injuring more than 2,000. It may sound like a nightmare, but it happened here, and it's a storm that still leaves scientists mystified.
It looked like an environment that would happen today in the spring. You know, it occurred in mid-March. We get these systems every year, but for some reason, Mother Nature decided to put on a show that day.
Mount Vernon native John Hart, who is a lead forecaster for the Storm Prediction Center in Oklahoma, has studied tornadoes extensively, and he spent a lot of time studying the Tri-State Tornado.
These people were caught off guard. They were caught out in fields. Children were in schools. People were down in the mines. It hit Murfreesboro and West Frankfort, and people were at work. It was a weekday.
And in 1925, there was no warning.
So the first knowledge anyone would have that a bad storm was coming was the sky got dark.
And by that time, it was too late.
Employees at the ice plant here in town, that they had to take cover in the ice locker. Another person was at the company store, the railroad company store, and they took cover in a vault of some sort.
Pictures of the tornado's aftermath, like these, line the wall at the Jackson County Historical Society, highlighting the path, which could not have been worse. Gorham, destroyed. 2 schools were hit in Murfreesboro. In DeSoto, 33 of the town's 69 that died were in a school. Farther east, miners in West Frankfort came above ground to find their houses gone, their wives and children lying in the rubble, and the small community of Parrish nearly wiped off the map. That night, it was the fires. They ravaged parts of Murfreesboro, and the effects of the damage would last for years.
For Murfreesboro, it was a real financial, economic game changer because Murfreesboro apparently had been a real boomtown up until the time of the tornado.
Today, you have to know where to look to see the signs of the tornado. This marker sits in Longfellow Park. Longfellow School once sat right here. Homes have been built in place of where others were destroyed. And then there's advancement in meteorology and improved warning systems that today would likely save countless lives.
If the same storm happened today, I'm confident it wouldn't kill 695 people, but it would still be terrible.
After a tornado event, you often hear us rating those storms on an EF scale. That scale is known as the Enhanced Fujita scale, and it ranges from an EF0 all the way to an EF5. An EF0 has wind speeds of up to 85 miles per hour, but once you get to an EF5, you're talking about winds over 200 miles per hour. Now that's a big difference when it comes to damage. Damage from an EF0 typically leaves some downed tree limbs, maybe some damage to shingles, but once you get those winds over 200 miles per hour, you're talking about homes that are completely blown away. This is an image sent in by Tony Lawbeck of an EF2 that was in Carpenter, Wyoming. Locally, we have seen tornadoes on every level of that EF scale. Just last year in March in Poplar Bluff, we saw an EF0. What we typically see locally are EF1s and EF2s. In order to go back far enough to the last time we saw an EF5, it dates all the way back to December of 1957.
Anytime we discuss tornado safety, it needs to be understood. We're talking about improving the chances of safety. There are no guarantees with tornadoes, but being caught unaware and unprepared for a tornado will put you at risk for injury or death. The first step to being prepared is awareness. I'm not talking about the awareness of an immediate storm. Awareness begins days in advance. And luckily, that's now easier than it's ever been before. Modern forecasting includes the risk of severe weather and tornadoes out to about 3 days. The Storm Prediction Center highlights areas of concern, and we've got you covered by including that information on our maps. When you know there's an elevated risk of severe weather and tornadoes, you're more prepared to make adjustments to your routine or schedule to help keep you safer, like staying off the roads. Being in a car is one of the worst places to be during a tornado, and if caught in that situation, a higher level of awareness is required. In the event you're driving and a tornado warning is issued, you need to pull over quickly and seek sturdy shelter to move inside. You have been told forever to jump in a ditch, but that should be a last resort. Instead, look for a place to pull over, exit the car, and enter a sturdy building. If you are in a car and see a tornado, determine quickly which way the storm is moving. Do not drive toward a tornado, but determine which way is moving and drive away if possible. If the storm is moving right at you, exit the vehicle, enter a building. If none is available, it is time to look for a ditch or culvert that is not full of water. More people die each year from flooding than from tornadoes. So if choosing a ditch, you have to protect yourself from both.
Tornadoes can strike at any time. One local woman who survived the 1982 Marion tornado shares her story next on Project Tornado.
I came to WSIL in 1987. As I got out and started talking with folks, one question came up over and over again. Were you here for the Marion tornado? May 29th, 1982, an F4 tornado tore through Marion, Illinois. And 5 years later, it was the #1 question in the fronts of minds. A tornado strike leaves scars on the landscape. It also scars the conscience. Meteorologist J.C. Briand grew up in Marion, Illinois. Her family was impacted by that tornado, and she gives us a closer look at a day many can't forget.
The Marion tornado of May of 1982 roared through downtown Marion, taking the lives of 10 people. My family was considered to be some of the lucky ones. Some of the worst damage extended from Marion Ford to the Shawnee apartments where my mom had lived just weeks before the storm. People not only lost loved ones and property, but lives were forever changed.
They said that I had lost a large amount of blood, and if he hadn't have got me there, then I probably would have bled to death.
Brenda Hollop went to work on the day of the tornado just like any other. But what she didn't know is that her life would never be the same.
The doctor said that it looked like someone had just took a stick of dynamite and behind your knee just blew all that out.
Brenda and her friend Sherry rode out the tornado in the Taco Gringo restrooms behind the Bonanza, which is now Tequila's. During the storm, she lost consciousness and woke to find herself seriously injured.
It had thrown the Ford garage completely through that Taco Gringo. The front doors were the only thing standing.
Anthony Lloyd worked at Bonanza and immediately jumped to action after walking out to the destruction left behind.
She was going into shock, and I kept yelling at her, and Sherry kept talking to her, telling her, you know, you got to stay with us, stay awake. And she was really losing a lot of blood, and I was scared.
I can remember driving over the rubble. I can still remember that, and feeling the bumps.
It wasn't until waking up after surgery that Brenda realized the extent of her injury.
The doctor came in and told me that they'd had to amputate.
Although the tornado left a lifelong scar, Brenda says she's just happy to be alive and owes it all to Anthony.
And I did dream about it off and on for a few years. It affected me. It wasn't so much when I got to the hospital. It affected me a lot. I saw a lot of 18-year-old kid didn't really need to see it.
Nearly 40 years later, Anthony says he still thinks about the day of the storm every time he drives through town.
If it wasn't for him, I truly believe I would not be here. I think that God allowed him, to be able to get me to the hospital in the length of time that I needed.
The Marion tornado occurred during the peak of tornado season, but we can see tornadoes during any month of the year. Meteorologist John Ross shows us 2 examples from our region.
Folks in Harrisburg, Illinois and Perryville, Missouri both know all too well about late winter tornadoes, both suffering devastation on the last day in February, just 5 years apart.
During the pre-dawn hours of February 29th, 2012, an EF4 tornado churned through Harrisburg, killing 8 people. Coming during the overnight hours and prior to what many consider to be the beginning of the traditional severe weather season, the storm found residents unaware. Houses destroyed, cars flipped, and people missing. All of it evidence that tornadoes can and do strike our region year-round. More recently, on February 28, 2017, another EF4 tornado roared through Perry County, Missouri, just northwest of Perryville. This, another winter tornado, destroyed 5 homes, injuring 12 and killing 1. The damage then continued for another 50 miles, crossing state lines before relenting just southwest of Christopher, Illinois. Neither of these storms are outliers, even on their own respective days. February 29th, 2012 saw a total of 13 tornadoes across Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, and Indiana. 5 years later, February 28th brought 5 more tornadoes, including 2 long-lived storms to the region. Not only did both tornado outbreaks occur in late winter, they both struck on the last day of February. These storms won't wait until spring to threaten the lives of you and your loved ones, so don't wait to protect them.
Unique. That's one way to describe the geographical elements that make the United States so prone to tornadoes. The cold air streaming down the Rockies, the dry air coming off the desert, and the moisture pumping up out of the Gulf of Mexico make the United States the global leader in tornadoes. We think of them as a springtime thing, and April and May sure to lead the way. But in our region, it's important to note that just as many tornadoes occur in the month of November as they do in the month of February. We can never let our guard down. What's scarier than a tornado? How about a nighttime tornado? And they become twice as deadly as their counterparts that occur during the day. Since 1950, our region has experienced nearly 40% of its tornadoes between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. That's why it's important to always have a plan and have multiple ways to receive warnings.
It's clear that deadly storms can and do strike when they are least expected. That's why it's important to have multiple ways to receive alerts in the event of dangerous weather. One easy and free way to stay on top of all of the weather in our region is the Storm Track 3 weather app. Unlike a NOAA weather radio, you don't need to program it. Just turn on your location, turn on alerts, and forget it. It also goes everywhere you do. Anytime you want to check the weather, you'll always have access to the latest conditions and forecasts at your fingertips, regardless of your location. Know that we've got you covered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with the Storm Track 3 weather app.
There may come a time the Storm Track 3 app alerts you to a tornado warning and you find yourself in a space like this. Today I'm in a gymnasium. This could just as easily be a big box store. The idea of tall walls and a long span ceiling makes this an unsafe space. Tornadoes will put enormous force on a tall wall, and we have to remember, tornadoes lift and drop debris. That debris can be cars or even larger. A car falling through that roof or a ceiling makes this a very unsafe place to be during a tornado. But normally, in a space like this, you're just one door away from safety. Most facilities like this have a predetermined safety space. That's what you're looking for. But if you can't find it or you can't get there and you're threatened by a tornado, just stepping into this hallway, I'm surrounded by concrete block construction and steel reinforced doorways, making this a much safer place to be than out there.
Next, quick action saved this woman and her family. We've got you covered on the best ways to stay safe in your home when a tornado strikes. Next on Project Tornado.
Never wait until you hear tornado sirens to think about where's the safe spot in your home. If you have a basement, that's always the safest option. But in a home without a basement, we need to think about some options. It is a popular belief that a bathtub is a safe place during a tornado, but we need to dig a little deeper. In this home, the bathroom is on an exterior wall. Even a small tornado could throw projectiles through that wall. And the wall is on the west. Most tornadoes come from the west, making this one of the most unsafe rooms in this house. We need another option. There is a better option in this home. We're now at the center part of this house. I can't see any windows. That tells me I'm more protected from flying debris. At the center part of this house is a small closet. On the other side of this closet is a bathroom. So I know running through this wall is plumbing, and that plumbing works like reinforcement. It's also 3 walls in a very small space, making it more structurally sound. This becomes the safest place in this home during a tornado. Might seem a little silly to you, but in that safe spot, if you can store a helmet, it will come in handy. Most deaths from tornadoes are because of massive head trauma. Slipping on a helmet doesn't have to be a motorcycle helmet, a batting helmet, or a bicycle helmet could save your life. Staying safe in a home with an open floor plan can be a challenge. A News 3 WSIL drone view shows there is no well-defined safe place in this type of home on the ground floor. If no basement is available, an in-ground storm shelter should be considered. Without these options, hard decisions and last resorts may be needed to save lives. Nick Housen shares a story about a family that did just that.
I've seen the destruction that tornadoes can cause firsthand. They destroy homes and can destroy lives. But there's always stories of strength, community, and survival. This is how quick thinking likely saved one family's life.
I kept grabbing hold of the limbs until I got underneath it, and just as we got underneath it, the total, you could see the wind and hear the stuff above us.
The decision to leave this mobile home on the afternoon of November 17th, 2013 is one that likely saved the Lewis family's life. Carolyn was in this home with her daughter and grandbaby when a strong tornado crossed the Ohio River and hit Brookport just to the west.
We're fixing to go out the door when my sister called and said that it had hit Brookport.
Some quick thinking and a plan in case of a tornado led them to this bridge around 50 yards down the street.
The wind hit and knocked me and the baby to the ground, and I couldn't get up. Well, my daughter come up behind me and grabbed me and the baby, and her and the baby went in the creek.
The tornado roared down Unionville Road, passing overhead, snapping trees like toothpicks, ripping mobile homes off their foundation, and sending sheet metal and insulation high into the neighboring woods. The only thing between Lewis and the tornado's debris flying at more than 100 miles per hour was this bridge.
I've lived here my whole life, and we knew it was there, and that was our basic plan.
That afternoon, the tornado cut a 42-mile path along the Ohio River in southern Illinois and western Kentucky with winds up to 145 miles per hour, killing 3 people.
I hope spending this little bit of time with us has helped you to think about what you're going to do the next time severe weather threatens. Severe weather action plans need to be reviewed and adjusted. Tornadoes come every year, and we have to be ready. The topics we've covered, the storms we've looked back on, are all included in a print version of this program. You'll be able to pick one up free of charge at our sponsors' locations or here at the News 3 WSIL studios. There's even a coloring page for the young and the young at heart, and we encourage you to share yours on our Facebook page. As we move through this severe weather season, know that we've got you covered with all the information you need. But it's up to you to be aware.